And welcome back to Stream City Radio, streamcity.org, Stream City Sports. As we look at the bottom half of the SEC, when we're comparing conferences, we'll look at these teams and then we'll break down what the numbers really tell us. Because there's a lot of numbers being thrown at you. And we're going to get a glimpse of the SEC, but it's really not going to compare anything to another conference because while the numbers may look good or bad, we don't know yet how they compare to other conferences. And that's what the answer we're after. So, but we're going to go through this, break everything down, because I know whatever I come up with is going to be controversial to somebody. Somebody's going to tell me that I cooked the books to make the SEC look better or make the Big Ten look better or whatever. That's fine, but here's my homework. That's what I'm giving you right here. It's my homework and how I got there. And you may not agree with how I got there, but it wasn't just based off of opinion. That's what I tried not to do, and that's what I talked about a couple podcasts ago, this is about, I gave you my opinions, where I thought we were with everything, and that's the SEC still the best conference, but the SEC dominance is not there the way it was. And that's, nothing out of this is telling me otherwise, but it's also not confirming that. I'm getting numbers. I'm getting data points that we'll have to compare in the next episode, which will be the Big Ten, and we'll start being able to plug some of this stuff in. Tennessee, Tier 5 team out of the SEC, and a very nice victory over the ACC. In this one, we had a lot of ground to make up for the SEC, simply because of what Alabama did. They get the win over Syracuse 45-26. Neutral site victory, a 5 versus 8 tier situation. So you earned back 6 points. You were giving away 3. You end up at 15. But a very nice number. UAB comes in, and everybody was making such a big deal about these lopsided victories Tennessee had in the early part of the season. And yes, it's a very nice victory, but it's also a 5 versus 11. So you're giving up 6 points. You win 10, you end up at 16. Just like you do in New Mexico State, another 5 versus 11, 42-9 victory, but you end up with 16, which, don't get me wrong, those are still nice numbers. And it's still overachieving compared to, the average, but it helps kind of put those games in perspective. They're very nice victories, and they are big wins, but they're not the same as some of these other victories you see out there. And like I said, depending on the higher you are, you're kind of capped on how high you can go with these. But a nice 15.7 overall for Tennessee, so definitely performing very well in non-conference games. LSU comes in, and it's better than average, but much like Georgia and Ole Miss, just slightly above average. Now, that's fine. As long as you're not falling below average, you're still overachieving to a degree. We've got the victory against Clemson early on as Producer Blue decides he wants to jump into the picture. Clemson on the road, 7-point victory. You were a Tier 5 versus Tier 4, so you're actually getting a point for this one. And you end up with earning 3, so you end up with 16. Very nice situation for the SEC. Louisiana Tech comes in. Once again, it is a 5 versus 7, Tier 5 versus Tier 7 team, 23-7 victory. You end up earning a couple extra points, and you end up with 14 on this. Western Kentucky, not that situation. The saving grace for LSU is Western Kentucky was a Tier 5, much like, or Tier 7, like Louisiana Tech was. So it helps you out a little bit. You get no points for the 3-point victory at home, and you were giving up 2 slots, so you end up with a 10. So you're below where that, underperforming by a decent amount for LSU, so you end up with 13.3 for your overall score. Then moving on to Florida, another team that didn't do well in non-conference. They lost 2 out of 3 ball games, including that opener against South Florida, a 2-point loss at home. You were giving up 1 point because you were Tier 6, they were Tier 7. So you actually lose 2 points in the ball game for a 2-point home loss. So you end up with 9 overall. So you're starting out in the hole. Miami, you held your own. You did exactly what we would expect a Tier 6 team versus a Tier 1 team to do. You lost. You lost by 19 points, so that's a push. No win for the ACC, no win for the SEC, because you went down there and performed well enough to get to kind of make it just a push. Then you get Florida State. You're both Tier 6 football teams. They come into your place. You win 40-21, get an extra 5 points out of that, so you end up at 17 for that, which pushes you back above break even with a 12.7 after that outing that you started out with South Florida. Kentucky, by far the worst performing team in the conference outside of conference play. They actually play better in conference than they did outside of conference. Kind of lackluster against Toledo to open things up. It's only an 8-point victory at home. Luckily for you, Toledo towards the top of the Mid-America Conference, so it's a Tier 6 versus Tier 7. You're giving away only 1 point. You end up winning back 2 points for the victory at home, and you end up with 13 overall. Eastern Michigan played better. Still not massively impressive, but better. 48-23 in this ball game. End up earning 7 points for it. It's a 6 versus 10, so you're giving away 4, so you end up with 15. Here's where the problem came in. The worst outing any SEC team had all year long, including the Alabama-Florida State game, was what Kentucky did at Louisville. 41-0, a Tier 6 versus Tier 5. So even getting the point, it just gets you back to 0. You end up with a 0, a goose egg for that ball game, as you give away 13 points for getting blown out that badly. Luckily, you were a Tier 1 higher above or lower than Louisville, so you end up at 0. You end up not in a negative, but that is ugly and a big black eye for the SEC. And creating a problem when you look at it, because when we compare the SEC to the ACC, you've got 2 of your worst losses both came against the ACC. Auburn, a team that really performed well in non-conference play. One of the best wins in the conference had was them going week 1 to Baylor and winning by 2 touchdowns. It's a Tier 7 versus Tier 6, so you're getting 1 point right there. You get 7 points for the victory. You end up at 20 overall, a huge number that you repeat against Ball State. As Ball State comes in, you beat them 42-3, a 7 versus 11, and earn 12 points. Get back to 20. Then South Alabama is basically a push. You did exactly what you're expected to do. 7 versus 11. It's 31-15 victory at home. You're giving away 4 points. You earn the 4 points back and end up with a push. But it gives you a 17.3 overall. Very nice performance for the Tigers in that one. And to be honest, after what Kentucky and Florida did, conference needed it. Mississippi State, another team that did extremely well on the road, in non-conference. They go on the road and play Southern Miss. Well, that's a Tier 7 versus Tier 17. You're talking about a team towards the top of the Sun Belt Conference. So you're starting out even. And you won at 34-17. You earned 7 points for being on the road, so 19 points in that one for Miss State. Arizona State comes in. Once again, you get an upset here. It's only a 4-point win, but it was a 3 versus 7 thing. You earn 1 point back and end up getting 17 points overall in that ball game. Northern Illinois, a game where you were favored, and you did better than maybe expected for a Tier 7 team out of the SEC. 38-10 victory over a Tier 12 team. You earn 8 points back. End up with 15 overall. 17 for the score for Miss State. Now as we get to the bottom 2 teams in the conference, it is South Carolina, who had a miserable year, but had an okay year outside of conference. Virginia Tech, another victim of the SEC in this situation. South Carolina, a Tier 8. Virginia Tech, a Tier 7. So you get a point there. and then you go and win the ball game 24-11, end up earning 4 more points for 17 overall. Coastal Carolina comes in, 8 versus 9. You take them to the woodshed, earn them back all the points. Well, you came just short of earning all the points you could. But in this situation, because there was only 1 point difference in your tiers, 25 points. You actually put Coastal Carolina in the negatives in this ballgame with a 51-7 victory. Clemson comes, not as good. 14-point loss to the Tigers. It's an 8 versus 4, so you're getting some points back there, but you are at home, so you end up losing 6 overall and puts you at a score of 10. So where does that put us in the grand scheme of, we got to do Arkansas. I'm leaving Arkansas out. A lot of people would have liked to have left Arkansas out this year. It was not a great season. You end up with Arkansas State, however, was a great game. Cross-state rivals, and you took them in the woodshed 56-14 to Tier 8 teams. Arkansas State, because where they were in the Sun Belt, compared to where Arkansas was in the SEC, 2 Tier 8 teams. You took them in the woodshed, you get 13 points back, you were given none away. You equal what South Carolina did with a 25-point ball game in that one. Then you lose to Memphis. Good part here is also 2 Tier 8 football teams, so not giving any points away there, not getting any. And you're on the road, so the 1-point loss, Memphis gets 0 for that because it's at their place, so it's a push. Now here's where the problem came in. It was Notre Dame, where you laid a complete and total egg. Your defense never left the locker room. You lose 56-13. It is an 8 versus 2, but the problem is you gave up 15 points in that one as far as everything goes. So you're minus 15 in spite of the fact that you started out in the plus. You end up with 3 points overall, and that drops Arkansas to a 13.3 in the grand scheme of things. What does all that mean? That's a lot of numbers, and I probably lost some people along the way. But here's what we've got. SEC record overall was 41-8 in non-conference games, not including FCS, for an 837 winning percentage. 10-6 against the power conferences for a 625 winning percentage. 939 winning percentage against the group of 5 at 31-2. When you compare them to, now when we take the numbers that I just went through, where does that fall? Not quite as good. Overall, 33-10-6. Had 6 pushes, 10 losses, 33 wins for a 734 percentage. Then against the power teams, you were 11-3-2 for 750. And against the group of 5, you were 24-5-4 for a 757 winning percentage. Overall, 11-3-2. When we look at the scores against the group of against the power teams, that 750 winning percentage and a 13.2 is the number. So above average, 12 being the average, 13.2 is where you come away with, but not insurmountable when you're some of these other conferences. How will they shake out? Now, what do we do SEC against other conferences head-to-head? Against the ACC, you had a winning record 5-3-2 overall. But because of your performances in the Florida State and Louisville games, you end up with the 12. It's a push. Dead even with the ACC. You won more games, but when we're comparing conferences, not impressively enough to outweigh what you did in some really bad outings. So it's a push with the ACC. No advantage to the SEC in this as far as head-to-head. Look at the bigger picture later. 3-0 against the Big Ten. So, and that's with some of the Big Ten's top teams involved. Also had Wisconsin involved, which is definitely not a top team in the Big Ten this past year. But the number's not huge. It's 13.7, which is a very comfortable advantage when you're working off a 12-point thing. Where they were impressive was against the Big 12. 3-0 against the Big 12 with a 16.7 number coming in on that one. And so as far as how they competed against other conferences, it was Big 12 the best, Big 10 second. ACC actually gave them the most trouble. They played the most games against them by far with 10. Tier 1 teams for the SEC put up a 13.2, so above, comfortable, but not impressive. Tier 2 teams struggled and barely stayed above, kept their head above water with a 12.3. I think it's 12.6 actually. Tier 3 teams did well. 15 points for Tier 3 out of the SEC. And then and that would have been Texas and Oklahoma. Tier 4 teams in Vanderbilt and Missouri did the best. That was the group that did the best. A 17.3 for those two, as the Tier 4 outpaced everybody else. Tier 5, a 14.5, very, very nice number. Tier 6 is where the problem comes in for the SEC. And, you know, it was Florida and Florida. I can't remember who Florida was teamed up with in that one. But at any rate, it was not good. Oh, Florida and Kentucky. Yeah. Probably a reason I wanted to forget that. Florida and Kentucky come in at 11. So below average, bad outings for the two of them. Tier 7, 17.2, the second best performing tier for the SEC. And then Tier 8 did well as well, 15.3. That was your third best. So the thing that the SEC has always said, and we'll see if this proves out because we may have identical numbers, better numbers, don't know from the other conferences. But what the SEC has always maintained was that the bottom part of the conference is, nobody's ever said that the top teams out of other conferences couldn't beat the SEC. What they've said was that when you get into that bottom quarter, from half down, that the SEC is better than any other conference. We'll see if that plays out. Those numbers would indicate, you know, because you've got really impressive numbers with all but Tier 6. So we'll see how that plays out against other conferences as we compare them. And we will on Monday, we'll bring in the Big 10 numbers and we'll start breaking this thing down and comparing them. Now, that kind of puts a bow on what the SEC did. Let's look at, so we're going to cap it right there for the podcast. And we will come back and do a couple of rank 'em shows real quick, little quick bites of worst 10 outings, best 10 outings for the SEC in just a moment here on Stream City Radio, or look for them on the podcast on our YouTube channel, Stream City